So I want to start off this video by saying this is going to be a very rambling video. Also, if you see smoke, it's just my incense burning, so don't panic. I want to talk about my journey spiritually into paganism. I love watching videos on that. I love watching other pagan YouTubers explain their history and their path to paganism. So I thought I would share my story. My puppies are playing in the background like usual, so there might be some bone chewing, clanking, growling, weird noises. So expect that to happen. It's raining outside, so the puppies are stuck in here and I feel really bad, but it's been raining like crazy lately. That's why my hair is wet and I'm in a sweatshirt again. Anyway, I'm gonna start from the beginning. So I feel like a lot of people that I've watched have had some kind of magical experience growing up. I didn't really have any magical experiences growing up, so what I did experience was a huge interest in history as a kid. I was super fascinated with mythology. I loved everything about it. I loved learning about ancient Egypt and ancient Greece and the different gods and goddesses, and I used to draw pictures of the goddesses and my own interpretation of them. But I remember as a kid, you know, like climbing to the top of the playground and sitting on top of the monkey bars and looking out at the hills and feeling the wind blowing toward me, and I used to think that God spoke to me that way as a young kid, which is kind of adorable when you think about it. So from a young age, I connected nature to God, or nature to spirituality. I grew up in a vaguely Christian household. My family wasn't devout or anything like that, but I did grow up going to a Christian school. It was a non-denominational Christian school, and it was honestly a great experience. Everyone was really nice. I don't remember anything about the school itself that was at all bad. I liked it a lot. I had a lot of friends there. I identified as a Christian for quite a few years. I do remember from a young age feeling a little bit like an outsider. I remember going to church, and because I would go to church at this school pretty often, like I think every week. And I do remember feeling a bit like an outsider a lot of the time in that environment. Ever since the beginning, ever since I first started going to church and that kind of thing as a kid, I always felt like some kind of outsider in that situation. This is how it affected my personality as a child, and I know it doesn't affect everyone like this. There's a lot of fear-based doctrine in Christianity, and I was an uptight child. Like I've always been pretty high-strung. I've always been an overthinker. I've always been a little more on the serious side. So that fear-based stuff, it definitely scared me, you know, like there are aspects of it that really scared me as a kid, and I didn't understand some of it, and I would ask my parents questions about it, you know, and it freaked me out. I couldn't wrap my mind around a lot of things, you know. I couldn't wrap my mind around the one aspect of Christianity that I could never wrap my mind around is the idea that unless you accept Jesus into your heart, then you're going to hell in a handbasket. And in my mind, I'm like, well, but there are so many good people that I know. I know so many good people that aren't Christian. What does that mean for them? And then it goes back to always feeling like I didn't fit in, you know? Like I would go to services and there would be other people that were so into it, having these ecstatic experiences, and I just felt like I wasn't feeling it. It wasn't doing it for me. I didn't get it. So a lot of it I just didn't agree with. That was really hard for me, because when you grow up, as a lot of people know that have grown up in Christianity and ended up leaving Christianity, as you grow up and you're told again and again and again, if you don't have Jesus in your heart, or if you don't believe in Jesus Christ, then you're going to hell. There's a lot of fear based in that. You know, there's a lot of fear that I even still deal with today, being a pagan person. And that takes a lot of rewiring and backtracking to get over as a person. I realize that there are a lot of people that love organized religion and that can click with it and that jive with it and it makes sense to them and it inspires them and it makes them better people. It didn't do that for me. It made me a worse, more anxious, more fearful person and a very confused person. So it wasn't the right fit for me. I tried to make it fit. I tried to force it. I tried to read more of the Bible. I tried to understand it. I wish I could have just flipped a switch and all of a sudden it all makes sense to me. But it never did. It never did. There were aspects of it that I couldn't get over. There were contradictions in the scripture that I didn't like. There were things that I read that I plainly disagreed with. There were things where I just thought, no, like this is just not for me. I'm a very black and white thinker, and in my mind, I think if I'm going to label myself as something, then that means that I have to agree with all of it. I have to, if I say I am this, then that means that the whole Bible, gets a big thumbs up for me. That means I accept it and I acknowledge it and I believe in it 100%. If I label myself as Christian, right? That's my way of thinking. I know there are other people that don't think that way, and that's fine for you. But I'm very rigid like that. And I was like, I can't be a Christian, and I can't, say that it's all based off of this book and not believe in a lot of what the book says. I can't do that. And it was one of those things where it wasn't a rebellious thing. It wasn't like I wanted to be different than my extended relatives. All my extended relatives are very fundamentalist, very conservative. The majority of them. It wasn't like I was trying to rebel. It was just I could not get it. I couldn't get it. And the more I tried, the worse it got. So eventually I realized very fearfully that this isn't working for me. So I looked into Eastern stuff. I looked into Hinduism. I looked into Buddhism. I connected to a lot of the Eastern ways of thinking, like the oneness of everything. Eastern philosophy really rewired my way of thinking. Because in Western society, we're very focused on the material and we're very focused on God being outside of us. For the first time, I thought to think of God as being within me and divinity being within everyone and all of us being one with one another, and that really clicked with me. It made sense. Finally, I found something that I was like, oh, I don't have to force myself to believe in this. This makes sense to me. I liked Buddhism a lot. It taught me a lot of things about myself. I was really happy with it, but it still didn't feel like complete home to me. And after exhausting a lot of different options, I eventually just kind of gave up. I just let it go, and I gave up on trying to seek out things, and I thought, well, I'm just going to take a hiatus, and we'll see what happens, what experiences I have in the future. I was like, I'm done seeking religion, I'm done seeking spirituality, I'm going to wait until it comes to me, or I feel called again to find something. And if anyone asks me what I am, I'm agnostic. That was like from age 16 to 20, I would say. So like 4 years, I just didn't look into it anymore. There's a really important person in my life who I was in a relationship with for a while, for about 2 years. He's an amazing man, and we're still very good friends. And his dad was a pastor. He is a very devout and convicted Christian, which I respect very much. So I started going to church again to support him, and I went every Sunday to his father's church, almost every Sunday, while we dated. And I think that might have stirred up the interest in religion and spirituality for me again. There are aspects of it that it just reminded me a lot of what I'd gone through previously in my childhood and the confusion there. There were a lot of aspects of it where I was like, yeah, this is beautiful, you know. There are a lot of things. I mean, I was moved to tears sometimes, almost to tears sometimes, during the music and seeing how devout these people were and how much they loved their God, you know, and that I thought that was beautiful. And then there were aspects of it that it was hard for me to sit through. That kind of revived my interest in general. It got kind of the inner conversation going again in my head of, oh, now I remember why I kind of moved away from that. But I'm a very respectful person, and I think whatever works for you, works for you. I just want that respect to be reciprocated, and that's when I get upset. It's when it's not reciprocated. Like, I'm not going to tell you to believe something else. You don't tell me to believe something else. You know, like, I respect your beliefs, you respect mine. It's a two-way street. And his family and he were very respectful of my lack of belief at the time. So throughout the 2 years that we dated, I started to feel a yearning for something bigger than myself again for the first time. It started off as like a tiny little seed, and then it started growing, and then it started building into like this hunger for something. And I realized, oh wow, like I'm wanting something that I'm not getting. Over this time, I started becoming more interested in the things I was interested in as a kid, like history, mythology, things like that. And I had this revival of all of this childlike wonder that I had for all of these different subjects. I was really interested in like the Iron Age, and I was really interested in mythology and spirituality of that during that time. And I was just fascinated by it all over again. I knew that what I was longing for was something a little more primal, you know? Like, I knew it was something a little different, but I didn't know what word to put on it because I wasn't sure what it was. But there was a feeling that I had where I was like, I'm wanting something ancient. The first time I kind of got a glimpse into that was watching a video by Broadley, and it was about these druids and pagans celebrating some kind of solstice, I think, at Stonehenge. And part of me was like, this is so cool, oh my gosh, this is so awesome. I didn't know that people still did this kind of stuff. I didn't know people still worshipped the old gods and that kind of thing. And then the other half of me was like, oh, but these people are so weird, they're crazy, you know? And then I watched a video on white witchcraft, and I'd never heard of any kind of, like, I never really knew anything about witchcraft. And to me, you know, I was just under the impression that witchcraft is all pentagrams and, you know, dark black magic and stuff like that, blood sacrifices and that kind of thing, like most people. So watching that, I kind of had an eye-opening experience, and I was like, well, if you're doing witchcraft with these good intentions and to manifest positive things, how in the world could it be bad? Like, and I started to feel a lot of sympathy and empathy for these people. So I was thinking, these are just misunderstood people, you know, like, they're just misunderstood, and no one knows really anything about witchcraft. So they immediately put the evil label on it, but it's not evil, you know, like, it's not a bad thing. I looked into druidry, I looked that up, I was reading about it, and I had like this pang of fear and recognition as I'm reading about it. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is totally me. Like, I totally understand this. I totally get this. I totally relate to this. I'm terrified. What am I gonna do? This sounds crazy. Like, it's called druidry, you know, and in my mind, I was just like, who am I becoming? This is ridiculous, you know, at the time. And I was like, you know, I can't. I just felt like I couldn't do it. I couldn't explore it. I wanted to explore it, but I was like, how am I going to do that? You know, like, and I was thinking, I can't do this. I can't explore this. And I was like, it's just a passing interest. It's just a passing phase. It'll go away. And I want to clarify that I'm the one that put these boundaries on myself and my spirituality and my growth. No one outside of me did. My significant other did not put boundaries on me. His family did not put boundaries on me. The only one responsible for holding myself back is me, not anyone else in my environment. So that's a little disclaimer. So I held myself back for quite some time. And then it all started out with me getting into crystals and crystal healing and that kind of thing. And I was like, yeah, this is okay. I started getting into like crystal grids and stuff. And once I started getting into doing like crystal grids for manifesting things or, you know, creating good energy, I started then to do full moon rituals. I sort of let my significant other into this, and I sort of didn't, you know. I downplayed it a lot. I made fun of it a lot to kind of make it seem like it wasn't that big of a deal, even though I felt like I was changing in a big way, in a good way. I felt like I was finding something that made me really happy. And it was exciting. So then I started doing full moon rituals, and I started doing these things for a few months. I bought my first oracle deck, which was a huge step for me, and I was so scared, but I did it. It was like, oh my gosh, I keep just taking these little baby steps forward. And I was like, okay, it's not tarot. So I didn't know anything about tarot at the time, and the word tarot scared me. And so I got the Earth Magic deck, and I loved it. And I continued doing my rituals, my full moon rituals, and my daily card readings, and I felt really happy about it, but I felt this deep longing in me for something greater, for something bigger, for more and more, you know, to be more hands-on. So I bought a few more oracle decks. I started watching some YouTube videos. I watched a lot of videos on people that converted from Christianity to paganism. I thought that was really interesting, and I started to realize what I'm doing, or what I'm most interested in, is pagan in nature, you know? So I was like, well, the word pagan was terrifying to me at the time, but I knew that that's what I was interested in. So I finally got up the nerve to buy a book about paganism with the word pagan in the title, and it was A Path to Paganism by John Beckett, and it was an incredible introduction to paganism. It was amazing, and I highly recommend it. John Beckett also has a blog on Patheos that I follow, and it's awesome. He's so cool. So I started reading that book. I hid it from anyone that came to my house because I was so scared of anyone seeing a book that said paganism on it. And then I started realizing, like, how much longer can I do this? How much longer can I hide these things from the people that are closest to me? Like, this is killing me on the inside. I'm laughing about it now, but it was really a stressful situation for me. I read this book within like a week. I realized, whoa, this is what I want. This is what I want to do, and it was really exciting and also terrifying at the same time. There was an ancestor ritual in that book that I really wanted to do, and I kind of modified it, made it my own, and I included my dad in it. And that was a really intense moment for me. It was the first experience that I had that was really deep and really moving and brought me to tears, like within an instant. And I just felt this connection and this resonance that was very deep. And I knew that I was on the right track, you know? So I started researching more and more. I started buying more books. I read Drawing Down the Moon. That was really fascinating. A lot of it was very Wiccan. I knew that I wasn't Wiccan. I knew that that wasn't really calling to me. So I was like, well, I'm just pagan, you know? And I'm just gonna be a pagan, earth-centric person. And I really didn't think I would ever get into deity or anything like that. It didn't connect with me. Until it did. I got really, really deeply curious about deity and these experiences that people spoke about that they had with gods and goddesses, and I wanted to see what would happen. So I'd always been, ever since I found out about her, I'd always been very fascinated by Bridget, and I started to just look into her more, research her. I would write poems for her. I started lighting candles for her. I started talking to her, and I realized this is a thing. Like, this is actually a real thing, you know. So then I became like more of a soft polytheist pagan. Just ever since I embraced this new path, so many doors opened, and my path, my whole life completely changed. 100%, like it did a whole 180. I could have gone down a completely different road, like so different from the road I'm on now. And instead, when I started actually delving into this and finding out who I was and embracing this freedom of being able to be this, really be it, without having to deal with people being afraid of it, or people not accepting me for who I was, or having to hide all the time, or having to hide my books and everything like that, I realized, yeah, my life just changed. I've been growing rapidly. I've changed in a huge way, in so many ways. I'm still changing, and my practice is still evolving. And I never thought I would be interested in witchcraft, and all of a sudden I'm like so interested in witchcraft, and I read books on it, and I love it, and I love practicing herbal magic, and I never thought I'd be into that, you know? I'm constantly surprised by the new things that I'm interested in, and this inspiration that I have is incredible. Paganism caused me to really have the backbone and the courage to get out of my comfort zone and change my life. And if it hadn't been for paganism, if it hadn't been for my spirituality, if it hadn't been for it finding me, because it really just found me, then I would be in a completely different situation. It really did just find me. It was something where I had this underlying urge and longing, and it just kept coming back and kept coming back and kept coming back until I couldn't deny it anymore. And I was like, I can't deny this anymore. This is who I am. Honestly, paganism really, it saved me in like a huge way, because like I said, my life would be completely different. Not saying my life would have been horrible, but I wouldn't have been living my truth. So that is my story. I know that was a really rambling video. I hope it kind of made sense. If you want to have a conversation or talk about your own experience or your own struggles, or if you relate to this story at all, that would be awesome. If you could comment and tell me about it, I would love to hear from you. I hope you have an amazing rest of your day, and thank you so much for watching and listening, and I will see you again soon. Many blessings.